Point number 30, resting membrane potential is achieved by potassium efflux. RMP is achieved by potassium efflux. Remember, depolarization due to sodium influx, repolarization due to potassium outflux, hyperpolarization after action potential is over, potassium channels remain open, membrane potential becomes close to the potassium equilibrium. Hyperpolarization after action potential is over, potassium channel remains open due to membrane potential becomes close to the potassium equilibrium. Plateau of the action potential is due to the calcium influx while potassium is going out. Resting membrane potential achieved by the potassium efflux while maintained by the sodium potassium ATPase pump. Sodium potassium ATPase pump will maintain the resting membrane potential and achieved by potassium efflux. Plateau is achieved by calcium influx, repolarization, potassium efflux, depolarization, sodium influx, hyperpolarization. The potassium channels remain open. Membrane potential becomes close to the potassium equilibrium. Regarding the cat electrotonic potential, all or none potential. Plateau of the action potential in cardiac tissue is due to the calcium and potassium. Calcium influx while potassium is going out. Hyperpolarization of neurons is due to the potassium efflux. Hyperpolarization, potassium efflux. Resting membrane potential is maintained by sodium potassium ATPase pump. Neuronal repolarization is due to the potassium efflux. Neuronal repolarization is due to potassium efflux. Hyperpolarization is also due to the potassium efflux. And plateau is also formed by the potassium efflux and calcium influx. Depolarization and action potential of ventricular muscle is caused by sodium influx. Ventricular muscle depolarization is due to sodium influx. After hyperpolarization in action potential, there is increase of which of the following? Potassium. After hyperpolarization, potassium will increase. About astrocytes action potential. Action potential is generated with increased extracellular potassium. About astrocytes action potential is generated. About astrocytes action potential is generated. Action potential is generated with increased extracellular potassium. Action potential is generated with increased extracellular potassium. Repolarization is due to potassium efflux and depolarization is due to the sodium influx. But it is different in organ of corti. Which of the following is responsible for the depolarization of action potential in organ of corti? Potassium influx to the hair cell. Potassium influx will cause depolarization in organ of corti. Hair cells in ear are unusual in that they use potassium influx for depolarization rather than sodium. Hair cells in ear use potassium influx rather than sodium influx for depolarization. Utricle hair depolarization is due to potassium influx. Phase 4 depolarization produced in SA node is due to the inward sodium current. Phase 4 depolarization in SA node is due to inward sodium current. Action potential is reduced due to hyponatremia. Action potential is reduced due to hyponatremia. In 40% deep burn cases, iron lost causing decreased action potential is hyponatremia. In 40% deep burns cases, iron lost causing action potential decrease is hyponatremia. A patient with 40% burn, there is loss of water and electrolytes. Which of the following electrolyte abnormality will be present associated with a low voltage of action potential is hyponatremia? Decreased sodium. Decreased sodium will decrease the action potential. Usually in the burn patient. Heart ventricles decrease upstroke due to prolonged sodium channel opening. Heart ventricles decrease upstroke due to prolonged opening of the sodium channels. Cardiac muscle cannot be tetanized because long refractory period. Cardiac muscle cannot be tetanized because long refractory period. So, heart ventricles decrease upstroke due to prolonged sodium channel openings. Cardiac muscles cannot be tetanized because long refractory period. Local cell response to action potential is increased amplitude with increased stimulus. Local cell response to action potential is increased amplitude with increased stimulus. Excitation of the nerve trunk is shown by compound potential. What shows the excitation of the nerve trunk? Compound potential shows excitation of nerve trunk. Potential recorded after the stimulating nerve trunk depolarization is compound action potential. The potential which is recorded after the stimulation of the nerve trunk or depolarization of the nerve trunk, what is shown? It's the compound action potential which is shown when the nerve trunk is stimulated, or the excitation of the nerve trunk shows compound potential. Regarding myelinated fibers, action potential at internodes. In myelinated fibers, action potential occur at internodes. True regarding action potential is subsequent action potential can summate. What is true regarding action potential? Subsequent action potentials can summate. A drug completely blocks the sodium channels in nerves. Which of the following effects on the action potential would it be expected to produce? Block the occurrence of action potential. A drug completely blocks sodium channel in nerves. Which of the following effects on action potential would be expected? Block the occurrence of action potential. If the sodium channels are blocked in nerves, there will be no occurrence of action potential. 4 confusing MCQs. Hypokalemia in neurons cause hyperpolarization. In neurons, hypokalemia, decrease in potassium level, will cause hyperpolarization. Hypokalemia cause hyperpolarization in neurons. Hyperexcitability of the nerves occur if decreased extracellular calcium ion. If extracellular decreased calcium ion, then there will be hyperexcitability of the nerves. How the nerves are hyperexcitable? When there is decrease in calcium ion in the extracellular environment, the nerves will be hyperexcitable. Nerve stimulation is more difficult to create an action potential in which conditions? Hypokalemia. In hypokalemia, nerve stimulation is more difficult to create an action potential. Nerve stimulation is more difficult to create an action potential in hypokalemia. Decreased height of action potential occur in hyponatremia. If there is decreased sodium, then the height of action potential will be decreased. If there is decreased sodium, then the height of action potential will be decreased, because the influx of sodium will lead to the action potential. And if there is blockage of sodium channels, there will be no occurrence of action potential.